Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maximizing Your Potential, where we focus on helping you become the best version of yourself, explore new and different ways of showing up better personally and professionally, and really giving you some tools and resources that might help you along the way. I'm delighted to have Sarah Waite with us today. I'm going to let Sarah introduce herself momentarily, but in full disclosure, she's someone that I work with, know quite well, and think she's a superstar. So I'm delighted to have you here, Sarah.
Well, thanks so much for asking. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
It's going to be great. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I'm sure it'll be enlightening and fun filled for everyone who's watching.
Sounds great.
Great. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, happy to do so. So I'm Sarah Waite. I am the proud Chief People Officer of Second Harvest Heartland. I am fortunate to be here helping us work on ending hunger together, which is unfortunately an increasing problem in Minnesota. It
Mm.
has been really a capstone role for me to find my way to this work. I'll kind of the brief overview is I actually started my first job in a nonprofit agency working with adults with disabilities when I first graduated from college. I actually was working three jobs. I am a broadcast journalism major, and so I was working at a radio station at night, working for the agency during the day, and then working for a daycare in the middle. So it was kind of a wild and crazy scramble back in the day, but learned a lot and sort of found my way into HR through that first role and figured out it's something I really like and I'm pretty good at. So was lucky to start there, moved on to a large apparel manufacturer where I had a couple of different roles,
Mm.
including some leadership development and some onboarding, got to travel to our plants across the country. So that was definitely a learning experience. At that point, we moved to back to Minnesota. I am a Minnesotan who had been living out east where I went to college and then where I held those first two jobs. But like all good Minnesotans, eventually need to come home. So did that, started at Target for 8.5 years,
Mm.
both working in a HR business partner and a recruiting capacity. Then went to Medtronic where I was working as leading specialties for the neuromodulation business, which I really loved. My dad had Parkinson's, so there was a personal
Mm.
affinity, and it was really an opportunity to tie together recruiting, diversity, leadership, talent management, and think about our strategies comprehensively for that business. I then went on to lead DEI at the enterprise level for a couple of years. And that's kind of when I had my I don't really know how I got here moment of this job is really working at a much bigger scope than I'm like.
Mm.
The neuro business was about 2,000 people, so you could really know people and ask questions. And at the time when I was in corporate, Medtronic had acquired Covidian and went to 90,000 employees, and you couldn't really ask anybody anything. And decisions were made by PowerPoints that were sent, via email. And it just, I was like, I'm sort of missing my purpose.
Right.
Also, my dad passed away, so I sort of had this reckoning of what do I really want to do, which
Mm.
actually led me to come work for you. So lucky me, I got to go be part of G&K. It was really fun to be part of that startup mentality where there was a key focus on how talent could drive the business. We were acquired, so I moved on to ABRA, where it was a very similar role, new CEO, new CHRO, looking for how could we really rethink talent to drive the business? And then unfortunately, they also got acquired.
In
And
a
then I made my
pattern.
way. Yeah, it's one of those things where you sort of, I don't regret it. I mean, you learn a lot through those opportunities, and I met some amazing people. And it's the work that I really loved to do. It's sort of like if you're number two and you're going to become number one, there's probably two likely outcomes. And so
Right.
that's what happened. Went to Blue Cross and kind of same game. Amazing CEO, great CHRO, looking to, in their case, refresh and rethink how to be more innovative in the healthcare space. Were a number of changes at Blue Cross at the end, and truly this opportunity at Second Harvest just fell into my lap. And I thought, man, the stars have aligned, and really, I feel like this is the place I was meant to be.
That's great. Well, you covered a lot of ground, and I'd like to go deeper on some of them. But maybe the question that comes top of mind for me is, how is it different working for a nonprofit versus a for-profit public enterprise, right? You've done a variety of different things, but just curious, what do you see as the fundamental differences from a strategy or a people perspective?
Yeah, I guess I would say the first thing is when I first got approached about this job, I thought, oh my gosh, they're so small. Like, is like what, like,
Mm.
is there going to be enough to do? I can assure you there's more than enough to do. And so I think it's really the appreciation for the real how nimble and how scrappy a nonprofit is in I mean that in really good ways. We are tackling some really big, really challenging problems, and we don't have to have thousands of layers to figure out how we do that. So I think the um, learning for me and what has totally energized me is the ability to move really quickly because there's not a whole lot of people who have to weigh on something to say yes. Um, and when you say yes, you've just assigned yourself to do the work more often than not, or you with a small cadre of peers. But I think what's fun is there's a lot more real cross-functional, working with others and getting the chance to be a lot more directly impactful outside of your specific function
Mm,
um, because there isn't, an army of hundreds.
right. Yeah, as you say that, I think about the notion of the paradox of choice, right? When you work in big organizations, you have a lot of resources. It's a different set of choices. But when you're working for a smaller organization and you can't choose to do everything, right? You have to prioritize and get people aligned. And so how is that going for you? I mean, how have you been able to, what are some of maybe the key strategic priorities for you in your organization today?
Yeah, well, so a couple of things. One, so how is it go? I'll talk about sort of the team and then, some quick wins. I think the quick wins part that's really exciting is, some of my favorite examples. We have a warehouse team. We are struggling like many others with some of that entry level labor. And so I just went to the CEO and said, we need to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour. Here's my logic and I think it's something we need to do. She's like, great, why don't we do it today? I was like, okay, let's do it today.
Nice.
So the ability to figure out what you need and prioritize your asks, you can move those things quickly. Some of the other things with the team, I both have to make sure my team is ready and then the business is ready to take on the things we're thinking about. So when you think about talent more broadly, today our performance reviews are a Word document. There's a lot of opportunity to make the what we ask better. There's a lot of opportunity for us to ground more in our values. And there's a huge opportunity for us to look at how we're using our system to, actually manage the process more effectively. How quickly can we make those changes? What are the steps that will be logical for us to do it at a clip that's sustainable?
Mm,
It's not a race. And also, what do we get to skip over? Because I remember one of my other favorite stories to tell is a meeting with you, which I don't know if you'll remember, but we were in the middle of a talent review and the CEO said he wanted to pivot and have a different conversation. And my big corporate training is I better get out and start a new PowerPoint. And you looked at me and said, he didn't ask for a PowerPoint, he asked for a new conversation. We should think about what we want to talk about.
mm,
And that was so refreshing and so fabulous. And I think that's circling back to my current role. The
mm.
opportunity is there are things we want to build, and there's things we have the opportunity to be very clear that we're not including in the system because we don't have to include some of that complexity.
Yeah, what a great point. I mean, notwithstanding, I'd love to, continue the conversation and around performance reviews, but maybe a higher level question as it relates to engineering of processes, right, in organizations. It seems to me there's always this dilemma, and I've experienced it, and I'd be curious to see how you're experiencing it, which is your customers want a solution, and invariably there's some level of resistance, and it could be resource driven or perception driven or what they think the solution could look like. How do you, as an HR leader, try to figure out how do you thread the needle and engineer the right solution for your clients and system?
Well, first of all, I mean, I'm really transparent about let's test and try something. And if we try it
Oh,
and it
nice.
stinks, we can do something different. So I think there's some of that is like letting people know we want to try new things.
Mm,
I'm also really working with my team and trying to talk to leaders about we really need to make something that's works human-centered design, something that works for the people here. So it's less, and they are a voice in that. Like here's this is even more, this is a very tactical example, and then I'll give a more strategic example.
yeah.
But if you think about like change forms, if a manager wants to notify us about any change with their employee, if you look at our current form, it's absolutely designed for the person who's keying the information into the system,
Mm,
which is not at all how the manager is thinking. I want to change John's title and he now reports to Mary. And so I just said to my team, it's got to be what how do we make it easy for people to tell us what they want to tell us, and then we get it all complete in one place. So then the keying part is important, but that follows, it doesn't lead. On the
mm,
flip side, we're right now starting to think about our benefit planning. Well, it's really important to me that we do a couple of things. One is some focus groups, and focus groups are bigger than asking about, did what do you think about your deductible? A lot of people have no idea what that question means. The question to ask is, tell me about your family and your health and your priorities, and what are the things we're offering that you like or that you don't like or that you wish we were offering? And when it comes to wellness, how could we better help you with managing
right.
stress? So there's a better level of question that we can be asking. I'm also on this mission to create simple one-page overviews for our benefits. I don't know exactly what it
It's
looks
a
like, but
radical idea.
well, right. It looks like something like, why would I use this? When would I use this? What are the key terms that I should understand? How do I link to the form for more information? Because people don't understand STD and FMLA and short term,
Right.
like it's all terms. And I think if we could consistently for each thing we offer, I can't change the benefit statements from the providers, but I can make it easier for employees to understand how to navigate them. And I think I will never forget when I was in Puerto Rico with, at the time, the head of HR, a very brave person said to the leader, just so you know, we translate the things you send us into real English before we translate them into Spanish, because what you send us is crazy. And I thought,
Wow.
very right. We use a lot of big words as sort of as HR, we use a lot of our native language and terms and
Right.
process function, instead of, people don't care about the technical term. They want to understand, if somebody in my family is having a baby, what do I do? Okay, here are the different things and choices. So it's a, clearly you can tell, a passion project for me, but I think it's really
Yeah.
important because there's so much, another great example somebody told me is, every part of your benefit package that somebody doesn't understand is just money you're lighting on fire. And I
Mm,
feel like we're lighting a lot of money on fire right now. And I want to put out those fires and instead, have people understand and appreciate and be able to access what we offer, and have us question why we are or are not offering certain things based on what employees tell us they want.
yeah. And it makes me think of, any great support function, right? It's a question of, how well are you serving your customers? What are you trying to accomplish? How is it aligned to the organization? But it makes me wonder, and I'd ask you this question around, like, what does great HR support or partnership look like for you?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot, I mean, it starts with earning trust. You can be in the room, but it doesn't mean that people
Mm,
will have the open conversation with you. It means, offering your opinion broadly. I think it's important that you understand what the business side of the equation is and are able to offer insights and thoughts on that as well as the people side. But I think it's also really important to remember our role as a coach and an advisor, not an owner and a doer. There are plenty of people who would be very happy for us to put someone on their team on corrective action, but that's not, or whatever the thing is. And
right.
really, it's how do we build those skills, offer that coaching, and really focus on the equity. I think that's the other lens that I always look at things through. Is it's really important that it isn't. We just had this conversation yesterday on something that, you know, just because you know this person better, you feel that you can weigh in on if they should get promoted, but you don't know this person, so you don't weigh in if they get promoted. Well, that doesn't seem fair. It's not Mary's fault that you know her and Billy's, benefit that you don't. So how our processes have to be designed really to think about in our interactions with leaders to say, well, I know what you're trying to get to, but how do we take a step back and make sure that the way that the impact that it has actually will be beneficial to all the employees in the long run?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think of as you're describing that, right? I mean, because you have such a progressive, forward-thinking view of what HR should look like, right? But oftentimes people's perception of it is policy implementers, right? People who are enforcing the rules, and as opposed to being the strategic partner of how can you build great processes, right? Or how do you build better solutions, or what is it that you're trying to solve for, which I love. So what are as you talked about some of your priorities, like what are some of the things that you're thinking about to attract talent beyond, you talked about compensation being one of them.
Yep.
How are you thinking about, bringing talent into the organization?
Yeah, I think, I mean, by the way, we hardly have it all figured out. Let me be super clear. Where one of our key initiatives is a combination of automation, innovation, and equity in our processes. So, we there are still times where I'll ask for something and then realize, I guess we don't have a policy around that. Maybe we need to start before we start with, something more sophisticated. Do we even have the baseline in place? So there is an important point to having current, updated, accuracy, easy to find policies. So there's a balance of making sure that the foundational pieces are in place. But as we are talking about, representation is really important to me. And I use representation because it is that combination. If you think about your place of employment as a house, it's, who you bring in the front door for staffing, who gets to move up through the different levels
Right.
through promotion, and then who walks out the back door through attrition or, leaving the company. And being conscious about those movements and what does that mean? And so how do we what is the role of HR in terms of, if everybody likes to start with staffing, which is a piece of the puzzle, but I always emphasize, if you have a big open door at the front, but you have an equally big door at the back, you really have made a net
Yeah.
nothing improvement. But if we do start with HR as an example, how are we looking at the funnel? We have an accountability to making sure we're looking at how we attract great, diverse talent to us. But as the talent narrows, then there's decisions that are being made by managers, and ultimately the final selection and retention that is an organizational wide priority. So it's sort of like understanding how we attack the problem and then where are the points in the process that there's different places that you would investigate to see how you would move the needle, i.e., might there be leader bias in the interview process or in our onboarding or in, so that diversity piece is super important and super important given the communities we serve. It also ties to improving cultural fluency. We are a very well-intentioned, mission-driven, great organization, and we need to understand that we're working with lots of different communities, and it's important that we are curious and empathetic and come from that place of partnership, especially as we are working on some really big radical ideas. And so it might be a great idea for us. We have to make sure that we are really working on that building partnership to bring others along. So when we talk about that from the HR lens, it's the combination of communication and competency. How do we help build people's ability to do the things we want to do well? So that's exciting, and I think something we need to put a lot of work into, and we will.
Yeah.
And then celebrating our culture. For me, the mission that we have at Second Harvest is incredible. The moment when you're really trying to solve such a difficult challenge at a time that it's on the rise is so compelling. The hunger divide is huge. And so how do we really, our values can guide us to make the right decisions to create a great place to work for people. and for us to really keep that mission front and center. So what are the things we're working on in terms of creating um, that experience for all employees, both those who've been here a long time and the new ones who join us?
Yeah. I mean, as you describe that, just the power of having a clear and focused mission, right? And I think the more clearly people understand the purpose of the organization, right? The easier it is to get everybody aligned and focused and rowing in the right direction and excited about it, which is awesome. So I'm happy for you. I wanted to maybe go a little bit deeper on the diversity, equity, and inclusion
Yeah.
piece. How well embedded is the diversity, equity, and inclusion component into your strategy at Second Harvest?
Yeah, I'd say we have done some things extremely well. I have a gifted DEI leader, and so that
Nice.
is a lot of it, to have a strong person who's focused on it, who has established herself as a trusted advisor and is seen as somebody who can come in to help with internal mitigation, but also represent us externally through facilitation and helping to bring community members together. She's really outstanding. So I
Nice.
think some of it is building the right team and making sure that that you've got somebody who has those skills. But the thing that a lot of companies fall into is, great, we have one person and it's their job to lead this for us. And that can't be true. It has to be who we all are, not who one person is.
Mm.
So how are we looking at in our strategy? In the staffing world, really looking at, we haven't gone to requiring diverse slates because I think that can have a negative, we can talk about that, but I think that has sometimes good intentions, but it can have mixed results. But we are at least looking at trying to see where are we seeing where we're doing well with who we're bringing in and who we're selecting. So understanding it more there. We've also really done a lot of looking at our policies, and here's a simple example of our bereavement policy was 3 days for the following people, mother, brother, sister, I can't even remember what it was.
Traditional, yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is, who are we to tell people who are their family? Many, many people are raised by people who are not a blood relative, but they are very close to. That we don't get to decide that a second uncle isn't important, because it very well in an
Right.
individual's life or in certain cultures is extremely important. So we've now moved it to 5 days for anyone you love, and like that's just the right thing to do, to make sure that people know that we that who you are and who is important to you is important to us. And so we've advanced our paternity policy to be for 12 weeks for anyone who's caring for a child. We've looked at our sort of just looking through all of our processes. I didn't realize that this was another sort of emergency call. I didn't realize somebody before I arrived had sunset our domestic partner benefits when marriage became legal in Minnesota. Well, there's a difference between legal and that we should decide that only people who are married deserve to
Mm.
have benefits.
Right.
And so that was another, I found out this is not a policy. I think we need to quickly put this back in place. It's important. And so those are the things that I'm trying to look at, is the the things that we say about who we are they really the things that we meet people with in their experience as they need to call on us for important moments in their life,
Yeah.
as well as sort of last thing, something that we've been very active on is employee voice. You might remember when we had I think it was called like the 1,000 questions, or there was something where we were trying to actively engage people to provide ideas to us, with the belief that the people closest to the work have the answers. Well, it's the same idea that as we are moving towards this big initiative that we're working on to really think about some new ways of approaching hunger. We've done focus groups with employees and asked them for their input and their thoughts and their fears and their excitement, and really taking time to invest in, it's not just an engagement survey, it's an ongoing two-way conversation about, tell us what's important to you, tell us what's on your mind, and then packaging it back to say, you told us that stress management is really important to you, so we're bringing in someone to give some stress management tips in the next month,
Yeah.
and or we'll be looking at some curriculum that we'll be able to offer you on how you can, just simple things. Curriculum doesn't need to be a really big word. It can be, we have the call map as one of our benefits. Have you tried it? Like it, anyone can take a stab on the things that employees want, but if we can listen to what they say is important and then we can demonstrate how we respond back, that's to me where the inclusion happens.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, I think about organizations, right? You have an espoused set of values, but then your actions don't align with those, and people immediately go like, "Well, wait, that's not what I thought I signed up for, right? Or this isn't the organization I thought I was joining." So I think it is so important to be aligned. But I think to a much bigger, larger point, which you highlighted, which D&I is really about a sense of belonging, right? Feeling
Mm-hmm.
valued, feeling heard. So creating that dialogue is really powerful. How do you go about getting some leaders in the organization who maybe aren't as committed or bought into
Mm-hmm.
to this work?
So I think it will be interesting. So one of the things as we going back to the performance review that I am moving forward with for this year's annual review is when we assess everybody, including me, we'll be looking at the what and the how. So the what is your goals and how did you perform on your goals? And the how is how did this individual demonstrate our values? Because if we believe that our values are important, then every single person should be measured or incented and rewarded for demonstrating our values. So that's from our pickers
Yeah.
to our drivers to our CEO to our managers. And so I think that's getting more clear that this is truly an expectation of your job. And for leaders, the way that you demonstrate our values, a lot of that is putting your time into leadership. And so um, always try to I always believe that managers, I sort of in my mind, I have a person, sitting at their desk with arrows coming at them from every possible direction. With finance wants a budget, and HR wants you to fill out a form, and
Right.
this employee has a challenge, and this person just quit, and they're trying to do their best. Like I really do believe managers are trying to do their best. Have we made it easy for them to do their best? Have we defined what we expect the best means? And have we given them some tools and training? So we're
Mm.
investing in some leadership training. We're bringing in an external partner to do some kind of leadership 101. But then that makes it clear. And some people will be excited and grab onto the tools. Some people will resist and ultimately have to decide if the job as it's being redefined is for them. And I think that's okay. I
Yeah.
hope and I feel that most people really have been looking for the opportunity to take what they've wanted to do and learn how to do it. And so I'm hopeful that that's what we'll see.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Sounds very exciting and
Yeah, it
powerful
is.
work, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I like the piece of you get what you measure. And if something's
Hmm.
really important, then you have to have some type of process or methodology to measure it. And performance reviews are an interesting one. I've seen some where, it's a 6-page process, which
Right.
people, right, despise. And then I've seen some where they don't have any performance evaluation process because they don't want to necessarily have to engage or give people the difficult feedback. So where do you land in the world of
Yeah.
performance management, kind of ideologically? What do you think is most effective or important for leaders out there?
The most important thing is to have constructive, regular, two-way conversations with your team.
Mm.
A piece of paper is the least important thing about the process, and a rating is even less so. So that could lead to you eliminate the process and the structure, and that can work if you have good leaders, good routines, and a strong commitment and expectation that the conversations happen. What a
Yeah.
performance review process with at minimum a mid-year and an annual or maybe even a quarterly check-in is a structure for the conversation. So that's my belief and why I want right now, I think for us, the right next step is to um, it's interesting. Nobody says, I can't wait for my performance review. It's the best day of my life. But part of the reason is we don't do a good job of helping people with clear goals that they can celebrate and understand what accomplishment looks like. So really, instead of thinking about it as an assessment of you, it's more of a, this is the roadmap of your accomplishments. What do you want to be able to say a year
Right.
from now you've accomplished? What do you need from me in order to make that happen? How will we know that it's happened? Because we have some measure of success defined. And how can we check in along the way to figure out what we need to do differently so that you can use all the skills and talents that you have? And that's what I think we want to have as our performance conversations. And again, we are not there yet, but I'm hoping we can continue to move our conversation maturity. And then part of that is, if you get great results but you run people over along the way,
Mm,
that's not it. And so or if you don't have the cultural fluence to work effectively with your peers or your team or our partners, like that's also not okay. It's got to be the both. And if by signaling that both are important, and or it's great to hear that you
right.
aspire to go deeper in this area. If you want to become, learn more about how you can, advance your blah 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 skills, here's how we can help you. So it's really using the tools to foster good conversation and understand what's important to people, while also as an organization, making sure that we keep the important at the top line, because we get mired in the day-to-day, doing that. It's important that people can keep an eye, and we all keep sight on what's the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish.
Right. Well said. That's exactly right. I think it's important, right? It's you said it's the what and the how. It's not just the what are you
Yeah.
trying to do, but how do you go about doing it? So I
Hmm.
want maybe going to pivot to maybe some more personal questions
Yeah,
then.
of course.
So what motivates you?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a funny answer, but I remember one time I was working at a company and I got called into the president's office. And I mean, this was supposed to be this really big deal to be, and it was. But he asked me, what is your aspiration? Like, what is your aspiration in the next couple of years? And I thought, my aspiration is to be a really good mom. And I don't feel like I can say that in this moment. And that doesn't feel very good. But right now I need to say something because he's just looking at me while I'm talking to myself in my head. So I gave him a baloney answer about blah, blah, blah. I want to advance. But I thought, I left there thinking,
Mm,
that's really sad. And I never want to feel that way again. So I guess success means to me that my family comes first. I do have two amazing kids who are 21 and 18. So the what they need from mom looks a lot different, but they're really important to me. And having that as the center of what I do, along with my amazing husband, is got to come first. And having a job and a workplace where we can be our authentic self. People talk about their whole selves and are welcome to do so. And having the opportunity to sit in the chair that gets to create some of that for other people through the work on culture and talent is also really important. So I guess success is feeling like I'm making a difference, and but also making a difference in all scopes of my life, not just in my work one.
mm, that's nice. And as someone, as I know you, right? I mean, you're someone who's very balanced in understanding like what's important to you and how you lead your life and how you invest your time. So how do you stay balanced?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you juggle every week, and every week a ball is going to drop. You just hope it's not the same one over and over again. I am a person, I am a very goal-oriented person. I love New Year's resolutions and sort of
Mhm.
those kinds of goals. And so my word for this year is focus. So trying to really be thoughtful on, am I truly focused on the things that are most important to me?
Mm,
That means I need to say no to things that are not. Am I putting my time and energy into, if I say these are the things both in my recreational, we love to travel, I love to read. So am I focusing and prioritizing time to do those things? At work, making sure that the things I get caught up in are the things that, let some of the stuff go, and you can't do it all. So being kind and patient with myself and my team to say, it's okay if we can't do that, or maybe that just has to wait, or let's let's get an A in three things and a B or a C in three things, and then let's just drop the rest of it because that's all that we
mm,
could possibly do. So, you just try to focus, on those priorities. I also, health is really important. So setting aside time for that to make sure that I'm clearing my head and keeping myself, in good shape is just, that's kind of my personal therapy, is making time to spend time for that. It's kind of the one time of the day that I can do something for just me, and making sure I allow time for that too.
That's very nice. One of the things that I'm consistently impressed with, and this is a compliment, right, is that you're probably one of the better network people that I know. Meaning, like, you have really good relationships and you're very thoughtful and always available, like, to colleagues and friends. And so tell me, maybe share some perspective around how you go about and thinking about those relationships and networking, right? Because it's something that I realize most people don't do until they absolutely need to, right? It's like, oh, I'm looking for a role. Oh, I need to get into this network. But it's something that you do naturally and do very well. So what perspective or advice would you share regarding that?
Well, thank you. So it helps that I'm a flaming extrovert. So like I love meeting people. My two words are curiosity and connection. Sort of, if I like, sort of at the base of who I am curious about everything. So I'm always interested in learning. And then I love to make the connections to how those thoughts and things fit together, but also to people, like, oh, I was talking to John about this. You should really hear what he said. Oh, you're looking for a great podcast. This is one you should listen to. So it's sort of my natural wiring.
Mhm.
But I also, it's true. I mean, I have found myself, a lot of us, I'm sure, that when you think about the people that you're connected to, they're all your coworkers, because you spend so much time focused on your work. And while there's benefits to having close relationships at work, I've also been laid off twice, and I've wanted to make job moves, and you do need and want to have people available to, just go to in any, not only in the times of transition, but anytime you have a, crowdsourcing a question to people to say, I'm thinking of doing this. Does this make any sense? Or I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Do you have any tips or tools that I could use? I feel like people have been incredibly generous and kind with their time for me as I was coming up and as I was going through transition. So it's my personal commitment to pay it forward. I do try to pray. I'm active in a local, HR executive team. It's called HR Executive Forum. I've been on the board for a number of years. Um, I do try to, anytime somebody says, "Oh, I have a son who's graduating and looking for an internship, a friend who's going through transition, somebody who just moved to town and they're new, looking, they're in HR, but they're looking to build a community." I mean, it's just, I think that's part of, that is a part of my job. Not just like a job, it's part of my responsibility, and it's
Yeah.
just one of the things that I enjoy, but I also think it's part of what makes us human, is being connected to each other in those ways, so that then, it all circles around when you have a question and you need help, or you just want to find out information. You can establish yourself as a trusted person to go to. And um, like I said, people have paid it back to me in so many ways.
Yeah. What a great way to live your life, though, too, right?
Oh,
And the relationships and the richness of those, which is great. So two more questions. One, as someone who's not taken a straight path towards where you are today, it's been circuitous, and I know more about it. What advice would you have for people, right, who are either overly stressed about this particular moment in time, or this is the path that I need to pursue to get to where I want to go? What advice would you have for people?
yeah, I'm always the one. I'm always the outlier on all of the rating scales of, I don't really need a lot of stability. I'm not very rule oriented, which, for some people in HR that might be surprising, but I'm pretty not rule oriented. Um, but I guess it comes down to, know yourself and what you love, and that will guide you. I have done a lot of self-reflection over the years to figure out what is important to me, and it really does come down to, um, a business leader that I respect, that has, a strong vision and understands that talent is essential to delivering on that vision, and a white space where they're looking to test and try new things, and I will have the opportunity to be the trusted advisor to drive it. Like, and so that has taken me to many different industries, many different sized companies, many different, kinds of roles. But that's the place where I've always shined. And so I think for people to figure out whatever it is that you really love, those transferable skills are so much more important than, I had never worked in healthcare before and I figured it out. And I, had never worked in retail and I figured it out. And while I hadn't been in the nonprofit sector, I mean, Blue Cross is nonprofit, but if you really talk about a true nonprofit,
Right.
since I was 22, 24 when I left there, let's just suffice it to say that was a long time ago. But I bring the other skills that are transferable, and I think that you can learn the other pieces. So be curious to learn, be confident in what you know you love, and use those connections. I think going back to that, if good piece of advice is every Friday connect with 3 people in your network and just say,
Mm.
hey, thinking of you, how is it going? Oh, I read this article, I think you would like it. Isn't your kid, blah blah blah. It doesn't matter what the connection is, but um it will just open your mind and open your connections and kind of get you in that habit of making sure that there's always just a little window open to what else might be out there than what you're doing day to day.
Nice. My last question, one of my favorite questions. What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
Oh boy, that's a good one. What didn't you ask me that you should have asked me? I sort of threaded it through a little bit, but I think that as leaders, one of the most important things that we can do is demonstrate authenticity. I think that when we think about the ways in which the world has changed, it it just is true now. So whether or not we are comfortable with how people want to bring themselves to work, the ways that we are working, the changes and expectations about the relationship between employers and employees, all of those things have happened. And um, I think it goes a really long way for us to be able to admit what we don't know, for us to ask questions about the things that we're uncomfortable or unsure about. I'm always really, my team knows when, the phone rings. If it's one of my kids, I'm going to say I'll be right back. I will take the call, and that they trump. I'll be back. I think those signals and moments that we share and our ability to be vulnerable about things that are going on in our lives, that's probably the most important leadership skill that we don't talk enough about.
Mm, well said.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you live your life with purpose, right? And that you're intentional and you're doing really valuable work, both at Second Harvest, but as well as other communities as well. And I know you're a really proud mom
Yeah.
and member of your community. So thank you so much for making the time. I know you have choices, so making a choice to be with us is incredibly valuable. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone's enjoyed getting to know more about Sarah. You can find her on LinkedIn. So Sarah, what's your LinkedIn handle?
Yep. I am Sarah Waite, and you can find me there. I look forward to connecting.
Yeah, she posts incredibly good content. So she's someone you want to follow. Again, thank you so much, everyone. Sarah, great to see you. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.